Hello, friends. My name is Steve, and we are here today to start the Aspect Emperor series with the Judging Eye. We are reading chapters 1 through 4, so we'll be discussing those chapters. And we are back from our break. So it was it was weird having a Friday without coming by and talking. So, Katerina, how was your break? And also, can you give us an introduction?
Hi, I'm Katerina. This is my second time reading The Judging Eye. I actually read it just a couple of months ago, so you would think it's fresh in my memory. I'm afraid it isn't. There were a lot of things I did not remember reading. Um, my weekend was good. It was pretty intense, quite exhausting. I did a lot of traveling. I'm happy to be back and happy to be talking about the Aspect Emperor series with you too.
Nice. And Daniel, how was your weekend? And can you give us an introduction?
Daniel, I had a decent weekend. I didn't do any airplane traveling, so not as exciting as Katerina.
Was not very exciting.
Oh,
not the traveling part.
and I've read this book a few times, so I know a little bit more than the thing called Steve and Katerina. And since it's your first read, Steve, what did you think?
Well, yeah, it is my first read. Okay, so after the thousandth thought, I had some thoughts, but I wondered where we would go from there because it seemed like a weird place to finish a trilogy. And I love the time jump. I think it's what, like 20 years in the future. I really like that, and I really like seeing everyone in a different position because we went from them from Kellus being basically a stranger to working his way up and gaining power as through the trilogy, and then now he's up there. Esmenet is went from being a prostitute to being like a queen, or like running an empire basically. And I love just hearing what's happened, or at least getting bits and pieces of what's happened between the end of the Thousandfold Thought and now. It's, I especially love the children. I loved hearing about the kids, and I'm sure we'll talk about that. But um, so far, I think I I'm really liking this one. I think this is it has a different. I'm not sure if one of you can kind of touch on this too, but it has a different feel to it. I can't really put my finger on what it is, but it feels a little like a little looser. Like in the Prince of Nothing, through a lot of the books, every word felt really heavy. Like it felt really packed. It felt really dense, and not that this book isn't dense, but it feels like there's more air. Like it's a little bit easier um, to kind of get into. What did you guys think?
Well, it's interesting what you say about the time jump because I generally, whether it's in books or films or any kind of media, I hate when there are like time skips when we move forward in time. Um, and I think a lot of it it has to do with the fact that I often don't feel I don't find it realistic how there's a character that I knew at a certain place in a certain time. I knew I knew their personality and I kind of had an idea who they were, and then you see them like 10, 20 years later and they're a completely different person. And I always find it hard to believe how that person got from point A to point B. Um, but with this series, I have to say it's not as bad as I don't have as many complaints. I think he does a pretty good job of like moving the characters forward in time, but in a way where you see how they got from where you last saw them to the point where they are now. Especially with a Kamian, like you even from like at the end of the thousandfold thought, you see how he's becoming this grumpy, bitter old wizard, and he's just more. It's just more intense in the Judging Eye. So the trajectory, how he got from the end of the thousandfold thought to the beginning of the Judging Eye, it's very like it feels natural. So I think he does a really good job at that, even though it's not my favorite thing in books in general.
And Daniel, this is you read this one a few times. What did you think about the time jump?
I would say I usually don't like time jumps either, but this one didn't bother me. I think when I very first read it the first time, it kind of did bother me, and the fact that Akamian was just like doing nothing seemingly bothered me a lot because I thought he was going to be like the opposing force. And then 20 years later, he's just a grumpy old man in a tower with like slaves that aren't really slaves. They're like his only friends that he lets them be married and have kids. It's pretty much like a guest living in a tower that just sits and reads books and has written thousands and thousands of dream memories trying to chase something. And the kids are really interesting, even the nameless ones.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people consider this book to be more like The Darkness That Comes Before, since it's kind of an introduction. Maybe that's what you like, The Darkness That Comes Before, a lot, so maybe that appeals to you. We get like new characters, so it kind of all seems new. And I noticed, like you're saying, especially with Esmenet parts, they talked like a lot about architecture and the surroundings, and it just wasn't as heavy. There was a lot of looking around and seemingly unimportant stuff. Like it's more of a story and less of a history, kind of.
It's a really great point. Yeah, I didn't think of it that way, but yeah, it's a really good point.
Yeah, I don't really know how to describe it. I do agree with you that the tone is maybe a little bit different. It reads a little bit different, but I really struggled to put into words how or what makes it feel that way. But it's true that the Prince of Nothing feels like it has more gravitas. There's it somehow reads maybe more ominous. Um, Maybe that's because some of the characters in the Judging Eye are younger, maybe a little bit less cynical than the characters in Darkness or in the Prince of Nothing trilogy. But it's really hard to point my finger to what makes it feel different.
The I was a little bit surprised because in the first trilogy we have in the beginning we had a pretty detailed account of what happened, kind of a recap. And we didn't have much of that at all. We had the letter, or that was like a page and a half, a little bit of detail there, but that was about it as far as like a recap of what happened. And it was from a certain perspective. It wasn't like like an overview. It was like someone's perspective of what happened, or like a quick
Oh,
recap.
it's there. But it's at the end of the book.
Okay.
But I think if I remember correctly, I think you can just read it now. I don't think it. I think there's a section at the end of the book that is called "What's Come Before," and I think he just like pretty much covers the events of the Prince of Nothing trilogy. So I think you can. Yeah, I think you can probably read it now, and it doesn't spoil anything for you. It might give you a little bit more like context for for what happened in the Prince of Nothing. But I don't think there are any spoilers for this book. So why would you summarize this book inside the book?
No, I mean that for like like the first trilogy, I was a little bit surprised that it didn't recap the first trilogy for someone coming into this one. The there were the only thing I didn't like about the time jump was the we kind of don't know a whole lot about the Great Ordeal yet. We know a little bit. That was the only thing I was kind of like another mystery. Or not really mystery, but another big event that we have to learn about, I guess. That seems like they're at the beginning of this Great Ordeal and we're kind of learning as we go.
That we missed out on the Unification Wars,
Yeah.
which happened before, and somehow one of the Phantom has still like escaped capture and is, I forget, they called him like the Bandit Phantom or something like that.
Yeah, he's the bandit Petiraja.
Yeah.
Fanile. The
So
last what's he? The last Petiraj of the canon.
and then after how powerful Kellus appears to be, it seems strange that he's evaded capture for that long. But I guess the Great Ordeal has been happening for how long? Has it already been happening for 7 years? Is that what it said?
I think I think it's in the middle of, or it's kind of mid, in the middle of it. I think it's, I forget exactly how long, but yeah, it's kind of, that's the only thing that I felt a little bit jarring about, is that we missed those events. After being so close to the Holy War, it seemed a little weird to miss so many other events in between.
Yeah, there's a lot that happened in between. I think it's maybe a little bit clearer now why the book that Akamian wrote is called the Compendium of the First Holy War. Is there apparently were several holy wars between the end of the first one and where we are now. But I don't know that I would necessarily want to read about those events, because like the Aspect Emperor, I think it's about something different. Like that's just not the focus of the series at all. And we already read about one holy war, so
yeah, I think
it might be a bit repetitive.
I think I was more surprised that there was more holy wars, because it seemed like the first holy war seemed really this monumental event that took so long, and it seemed a little strange that there were so many more of them. It kind of made it feel like it's happened again and again, so it just kind of had a weird feeling to it. Like being so close to the first one, it's like, did there have to be more holy wars in between? Could it just be something else? But that's a small gripe.
They were the unification wars. They were just getting the last little bits of people together, like Harwill and Sorwill in these chapters were some of the last stubborn people who called him a demon Sifrang, I think they.
Yeah, I think Kellus needed to unify the three seeds before he was able to start any preparations for the Great Ordeal. And because he basically established something similar to a theocracy and declared himself the presence of God on earth, it makes sense that those wars of conquest would be referred to as holy wars. But I don't think they necessarily copied the events of the first holy war, because that was very much about Kellus's accession to power.
In the prologue, I did like that. I did like the changes that had happened since then, because one of the notes I had written down was the scalping years, and they were hunting Shrank and they were bringing scalps of Shrank back. I thought that was pretty neat that it changed when it kind of Shrank became this, something that was hunted instead of hunting.
Yeah, what did you do? You have any guesses about the stranger that arrives among the Scalpoi? Any ideas of who they might be, or why they're searching for these scalpers?
You know what I've noticed, to get off on a little bit of a tangent, what I've noticed since I've started reading this series in Malazan, that everyone told me, not everyone, but most people will tell you, just don't try to think about what's happening. Just read it. Just enjoy it. Don't try to guess where it's going. Just go along for the ride. I think my brain has changed, where I used to try and predict things, and now I don't try and predict things. So I have no clue. And even if this series, especially, there's just so many different possibilities and weird things that happen. So I honestly have no idea. Yeah.
Okay, no speculations then. I won't ask any leading questions anymore.
So I guess, yeah. So do we find out who it is?
I think so, sort of, if I remember well, but not necessarily in this book.
Okay.
At this point, we're just looking for Iron Soul, whoever he's looking for, right?
An Aenonai called Iron Soul, yeah. And a mysterious guy with a cape.
Never trust a guy wearing a cape.
Probably not. So then there's the other section of the prologue, which introduces Kelmomus, one of the youngest of Esmenet's children, one of the twins. So what did you think of him? Because he's a little devil.
Yeah, he was the one who told Esmenet, hate yourself for who you are. Is that the same one, or is that was one of the twins, right?
Enrolatus,
okay.
The broken son.
Oh, that was the one that's the one that's locked up, right? That's in the room. Okay. Yeah, there's the
when he was 3. He said that when he was 3 years old to his mom.
Yeah, and I never really thought of it. I didn't really think about it during the events of the first trilogy, but it kind of reminded me of like Superman. What would his the powers that he has? What would that do to someone as you learn to control it? It's kind of like, what would Kellus's offspring do with that kind of ability, and what would happen? I never really thought of it, so I think that was really great seeing that the kids were so different, and Esmenet wanting them to love and just be kids, and they weren't. There was something else.
And there's also the fact that if there were like normal Dunyin, like not normal children, but like Dunyin children raised by the Dunyin, they probably have some system for how they raise their children and how they teach them how to cope with the abilities that they're born with. But Esmenet or Kellus don't have any of this support system. So I can't imagine just like, how do you raise a child like that? Like it's so much admiration for Esmenet for putting up with this, and I have no idea how you would handle this as a parent.
Yeah, that's true. And also, before this point, it's Dunyans like among Dunyans, and these are little kids among adults who are little kids to them. So it's a little different.
I especially like the nameless one that was born with 8 arms and no eyes. That was drowned in, was it wine? In unfiltered wine?
Yeah, unwatered wine.
Unwatered wine, yeah.
Yeah, and then I think there's another 13 that were that the concubines gave birth to, which is even crazier. It made me wonder like what it is about Esmenet, like what makes her so special that she is able to give birth to live and healthy children, whereas seemingly no other women that Kellus has tried to have children with was able to do that. Or even if they gave birth to children that were alive, that were deformed or just monstrosities as they describe it.
In the previous books, it alluded to Kellus selecting her for her intellect, for how smart she is, being comparable, at least able to handle the Dunyan blood.
Yeah, but like, is there like a blood test for this? I mean, I'm sure like she's an intelligent woman, but she can't be the only intelligent woman in the 3 Seas.
Methanet's there, so there was one other original successful one. Who knows who his mother is?
Yeah. Well, I don't think we We don't know at this point at all. Or, well, at least I don't. Maybe we do. I mean, I missed something.
I have no idea. Yeah, I missed that. It was revealed.
Oh, and then we find out that the compendium of the First Holy War we've been reading is a banned book that would get us killed for having read it. All of those quotes. And I think he talks about how they kill everyone, and when he sends the letter, he's just waiting for them to tell him to kill himself or for someone to kill him now, because he even heard the words.
I really like the letter and the way it establishes like what kind of government Kellus has built since over the past 20 years, and how really it is like he has built it on faith, and that there are like people genuinely believe that he is like the coming of God, and people are willing to die for this religion.
Esmenet affirms that when she's like talks about wondering what happened to all of those concubines of Kellus's and all of the slaves that were the like birth mothers, because they're all dead now. Had to be a secret. She's really struggling with her need to punish people. I feel like she even like said somewhat remorselessly that some mothers might have to sell their kids. It's just tough times. Even though that's like kind of what broke her initially.
She seems to have a lot of misgivings about the position she is in now. She like I think on one hand she like yeah, she realizes the power that she has over people, and how like one word, one small decision she make can affect thousands of people's lives. But then she also seems to suffer from a pretty strong imposter syndrome. Like she's constantly doubting like whether she has the ability to rule an empire like this, and whether the fact like whether it's even real that she's an empress. Like I think there's one section where she's kind of imagining that it's all a dream, like it can be real that she, the prostitute from Simna, is the empress of the entire three seas, and that she's mother to the imperial children. It just seems so surreal that she would be like that, she would get from where she was to the position where she is now.
It seems like Methanet's kind of her advisor, kind of her confidant. That he kind of reassures her, and that Kellus wouldn't have chosen her if she wasn't capable, and kind of somebody that pulls her off that ledge.
She's really turned inwardly to like her motherly instincts too, even though all her kids are seemingly terrible.
Well,
Or
Sammy seems
incapable of love. Terrible, who knows? Just incapable of being a like child.
yes, Sammy is the only one that seems to genuinely love his mom, but it's hard to tell.
And Kelmomus is the only one who can imitate it.
Yeah.
I guess they said Serway was pretty normal, and then Kellus sent her off to become a witch. So, oh yeah, and they have a female school of magic now. Women are getting all kinds of powers in this new world. One's even been the leader for 7 years, and her face is on every coin, I think they said.
Yeah, I think we talked about it last time that Kellus was already making some changes in the way that the society sort of works, and I guess this seems to be like another result of that, him giving more power to women. And like, why? I mean, why? I guess it's like a rational thing for him to do. Like, if you have all these like witches with unused potential that you can now, you know, put in a magical school, and then they will work for you because they're probably like, grateful that they can now finally do magic legally because of you. I don't know. That's just my theory. That's my hypothesis. I don't think we really learn much about the school at this point, besides the fact that it exists and it's sanctioned by the emperor, and that Serwa is a member of it.
Kellus didn't seem to have any. Well, at least it wasn't explicitly said that he had any problems shipping her off to the school once he learned that she had the gift. So I don't know if he's capable of truly loving. That everything is for a purpose, like we've talked about through the first trilogy. And everything is on the path for a goal, or for something. So I don't know if he can just love, and maybe that's why his kids are incapable.
I mean, the kids are just the diluted version, so I imagine it's just even more extreme in Kellus. And I think he does say in Darkness That Comes Before that he is incapable of loving someone. I think he says it to Nior. So it would make sense that he doesn't blink an eye when he's deciding whether to send his 3-year-old daughter to a faraway city to train as a sorceress.
He did feel a feeling twice, though. I remember, and they were strange to him. So,
Yeah.
What is love? Maybe in the end, it'll come down to what is love.
Okay, I have a what's probably going to be an unpopular opinion about. I can only speak for the first 4 chapters. I didn't get ahead like Daniel did, but but in the first 4 chapters, I can say, and I don't know if So I like that Nor is not around. I don't miss him at all.
No, you are forgiven.
Okay.
You know what? Like, one of the reasons I kind of waited for a very long time to start the Aspect Emperor series was, well, it was because I knew there was a time jump, which already made me a bit hesitant. But also like knowing, like, it's sort of finishing off the Thousandfold Thought, where my favorite characters either die or like disappear. It's just, I didn't have a lot of motivation to start a book where like none of my favorite people were going to appear, most likely. But if you're not a fan, that's fine.
Did that make you happy that there were some new characters to maybe invest into then, since all your old favorite ones just found themselves on the short end of the stick?
I think it was last time. I'm not sure if it was when we were recording or after, but we had mentioned, or you had mentioned, both of you, that there was new characters in the next series that we were introduced to, and at the time I was like, I don't want to learn about new characters. I like these characters, and then but now that I've gotten into the Judge and I really like this injection of new personalities and new people. I think it really needed it after that first trilogy to kind of different perspectives and different characters in the mix in the story. And I really like Noir. I just think his stories. I'm only talking about the first 4 chapters, so he may come back in chapter 5. But I liked him being gone. At least I'll say it's nice to have a break. How's that?
It's quite intense. And like, I mean, in some ways you could say that his story is kind of completed at the end of the Thousandfold Thought. Like, there is a sort of resolution to the conflict that he was fighting most of the trilogy. So it's fine. It was just it was a bit hard for me. But as you said, there are new characters that we get introduced to. I think that Sorwheel is adorable. He's such a sweet, sweet soul. I really like him. I I think I have come to like my Mara over time. Though I did find it quite difficult to get attached to at the beginning. And there are other characters that are going to be introduced, I think, later in this book that I think are very interesting to read about. So they're definitely like I have found some new people. It's just not reached the same, like they're just not as, I don't know. They're not Nayor, they're not Confis, they're not some of the other people that I really like in Prince of Nothing. But they're good characters. They're definitely people I like in this trilogy as well.
I think part of it is that, I mean, again, I've only read the first 4 chapters, but so far the feeling I'm getting from this world is, where would Noir fit? It's almost like he may not fit in this world. His his personality and his brute force kind of approached everything. Would that fit now? Where would he be? Like, what would he do?
I'll talk from a historical 3C's viewpoint, and that is that the last we seen him, he was with the Consul, and in the first apocalypse, the Consul and the Sylvendi fought side by side. So maybe he's gone forever, maybe he's not, but he is with the Consul, and the Consul are at the head of this war.
Yeah, I mean, certainly so far, we've only seen. Well, we got the scenes in Momem, which is sort of Kellus's camp, and we got some scenes in Sakarpas, which just been conquered by the Great Ordeal, which is also that's part of Kellus's tribe. So the only like, and we know that Neor is not going to side with Kellus. I think it's a fairly reasonable conclusion. So, if anything, like I would imagine him maybe working together with a Kamian, maybe siding with the consult, but it's unclear what's happened to him at the end of the Thousandfold Thought, and we don't learn anything new in these 4 chapters for sure.
I don't think we've seen. I think we'll see him again at some point. He's going to play a bigger part at some point. But it's nice having a break.
I mean, it pains me to hear it, but I'm happy that you feel that way, I guess. At least one of us happy.
I really liked his story in the first series, and I think it had the best conclusion of any of the arcs of story, besides the one that turned into dead ends. All of Katerina's favorite characters.
Yeah.
They're all definitely ended. His could end, and it could be a satisfactory story. He got somewhat revenge on Moengus, even though Kellus named him, so he was easy to kill.
I don't think it was a happy ending, but he did get a sort of a closure.
He could walk off in the sunset with Serway, just live his life forever, happy ever after. Good old Nair.
Yeah.
Yeah, he deserves some peace of mind, so maybe he got it, maybe he didn't. Maybe we'll know, maybe we won't.
They can't all be Sawbon.
Well, Sawbon seems to be doing very fine.
him and Proyas were the two Exalt generals from the First Holy War, so they're, I guess, the two most powerful generals now.
Yeah,
Besides,
I was very saddened to read that they were named the Exalt Generals, considering that Compass was the previous Exalt General. It just felt like rubbing your fingers in the wound.
I thought it was sweet poetry, like that poet that said something about Esmenet without her realizing at first. What was it?
Yeah, I
Something
was
something
wondering
is the
about
heart.
that. Like I'm not I suck at poetry analysis. So it did not occur to me that that was one way how you could interpret the poem. But then I wonder, is she maybe just over-analyzing things?
Seeing
Or
enemies all
is,
about her.
yeah, like, is it just paranoia? Or is it like foreshadowing of something um actually happening, something boiling underneath the surface?
She has ruled for 7 years without Kellus being there, and it seems every year his influence pollutes them less and less. We'll call it pollutes. There's more and more people seeming to come against him. I think for every one that comes out, he said, Nathanet said there's 10 in the shadows, just like him. So there is dissent among the people, it seems. But she's ruled for 7 years. That's a pretty good rule. She can keep going, can't she? Kellus saw something in her, which was her weakness, she thinks now.
I wonder, because like Callus has a very particular way of ruling over people that centers around people being complete true believers in him, and like him being a prophet or him being sent from God, whatever. um and it's really it must be really hard to replicate that if you're not as godlike as Kellus. So I mean, Esmenet can only ever be like I don't think she can ever really replace Kellus in the system of governance that he built around himself. She can always just be like an intermediary to the god. Um it's very obvious that she is just human, and humans can be replaced by other humans, while Kellus pretends or claims to be something more than a human, and is not maybe as easily replaceable. So I'm not surprised that there are some signs of the empire sort of starting to crumble. It's like, how do you keep a system afloat that's basically based on a like personality cult when the personalities left the cult on its own?
And he's taken all the men and all the food and all of the money. What he didn't spend on strength scalps over the past, I think, 11 years, it said. At first, I think it said they were giving a gold talent for each one, and then it turned down to 10 silver or something like that. But still, it's a significant amount of money that has to come from somewhere. Probably poor farmers. And they built granaries also. I think it talks about they built granaries kind of towards the north and started stashing food in there so they could not make the same blunders and somehow host this army. I think they said they had been like buying sheep and just herding them as far north as they could, and hopefully they can find them later and eat them.
It does seem that Kellus has put a lot of thought into the logistics of the Great Ordeal. And that they do talk about the fact that probably maybe more people might die of just hunger and disease before they reach Golgothareth than in the actual battle, because it takes so much food to move an army across a continent, and it's unlikely that the consult would come to them, so they have to march to the consult.
And they already had 20,000 people die from a lung plague just on the walk, I guess.
These walks are brutal, aren't they? Marches.
I've only went on like a day or two trek once or twice, but it is pretty brutal once you get a day away from a car.
Well, I guess they would be marching very slowly because they're transporting all the food and all the equipment. Unless you have a horse, you probably won't walk more than a few miles a day, I would think. But it seems much better organized than the first Holy War. I think Kellus learned some lessons there.
Mm-hmm. Stay away from the desert.
Yeah, I don't think you'll find many deserts in the north, unfortunately. This book does feel a lot greener to me. Like when I think of it, like the association that I get is always like forests and plain like grass. Whereas the first book, I always think of the desert and sort of like the drought and heat and the sun.
Kellus uses like mist, or what is it he uses?
Some voodoo magic.
Just
Maybe not
yeah.
voodoo, maybe it's just physics, but it's never very good at physics anyway.
Thickens the air somehow and creates clouds around everyone, so it would take some wetness around to do that, some coldness. It does feel a lot colder. The bird was a stork, which is like a cold ocean bird, kind of.
Yeah, what was that about? It seemed to be some kind of an omen. Maybe intended for the king of Sucarpus. But I was not at all. I have no idea what it's supposed to represent.
Yeah, I wasn't sure about that either.
I would
And
just
then
say spectacle. Kellus knows how to control the scene really well.
so are
He
you
had
are you
already
implying
destroyed
that
the
he's
city. What was that?
no? Are you implying that he maybe sent the stork, or that maybe he like conjured up the stork?
I don't know. It did disappear quick. He did appear right behind it, or
Yeah,
in the
maybe
sky next to it, so everyone looking at it would see the light that he was. So
maybe just got scared. I don't know. But the king sends Sorweel away immediately after the stork and Kellus appear. Even though originally he was supposed to be fighting on the walls, which is also very suspicious. And then there's sort of he's sort of being he's like they're running through the city and they're running into the citadel, and then they get there and Kellus just blasts a hole through the wall and kills everyone. And then Sorwheel pees himself, poor little thing, because he's so scared. And then the Kellus embraces him and tells him that he's forgiven. And he's like, what the hell is happening? Why is this demon being nice to me?
That was kind of odd. Yeah, that sequence.
Yeah, he's like, I would never forgive you. And he's like, no, your father, not me. And before that, they had seen a mage that had somehow been in the city that just blasted the wall down, or the gate, front gate. They're talking about just running through the mist, and then they see a shadow, and his eyes just turn into white, and then the front gate just starts getting blasted open. So,
yeah, at first I wasn't sure if it was Kellus or not, but I guess it was a different sorcerer.
Kellus is just too blinding of a white light, and he's already floating up in the sky, creating all the mist. It appears as though their war tactics are much better than they were before. At 14 siege towers or something, it said, and I don't even think they even made it to the gates by the time the whole thing was over. Kellus just showed up and killed everyone, probably. He's definitely more powerful than he was at the end of book 2.
I wondered if he was
first series.
I wonder if he's more powerful or if he's always been this powerful and just didn't use his powers.
I think he's still. I mean, magic is something that you need to learn. Like it's you may have the potential, but it's not like an innate ability. So even if Kellus has like an incredibly steep learning curve, I think it's still something that he had to study with other sources. Like he had a Kamian teach him the basics of sorcery. So I would assume that he had other mandate schoolmen or any of the sorcerers from any of the other schools teach him their tricks as well. Though he'd probably just pick them up very quickly.
Yeah, the Gnosis is the most powerful school, and he learned that first, but the other schools have some secrets too. And war is intellect, and the longer he has to hone his intellect, the more powerful, I guess, he should be. He's got to be, what, 50-something now, though? 52 years old?
Yeah, he was 33 in Darkness That Comes Before, I think.
So 55, maybe?
Yeah, something like that.
Like, Nakamian's a little bit older, a hunched old gray-haired wizard.
Okay. Speaking of Akamian and him teaching, so is it Mimira? The pronunciation?
I say
I don't know.
Mimara.
Yeah, I say Mimara as well.
Mimara. Okay. You're both way smarter than I am, so we'll say that.
It's not about being smart. It's just whatever fits into your mouth better, I guess.
So I did like that whole sequence of her trying to convince him to teach her. And there's another scene towards the end. I think it was the end of chapter 4, maybe. That it came in and that they were together, but were they intimate? Okay,
Yes.
because it was little. Okay, I wasn't sure. I thought so, but it wasn't a very kind of so that there was like blankets of, like they were together, but he had his hands on her, and they were talking. I wasn't sure if that was kind of, yeah.
It says she seduced him, and he said it'll never happen again. It was a mistake. So whatever happened.
Yeah, I think they both ended up regretting it afterwards. But it did happen.
I think it made Mimara like him less, and it made him like her more, though, even though they both did regret it. It had opposite effects. And Mimara's got something weird going on with her. She's one of the few, but also she has some weird broken part that opens up sometimes and can differentiate a snake from a rabbit. Is that what it said?
I think it talked about her being able to see good and evil,
The mark.
which
She
makes
sees a
it
stain.
which makes it sound like good and evil are somehow determined things in this world.
But
Like yeah.
when she sees a Kamian, she decides that it's not good and evil because she thinks a Kamian is good. It's damnation she sees when she looks at his stain.
So, but then so you can be good but still damned. That's a very strange concept.
Well, in it talks about like how some animals are like going to heaven, and some animals are going to hell. And they're just animals. Like
Yeah, I think
all snakes go to heaven. That's crazy.
I think she mentions that good men shine brighter than good women, which I find bizarre.
That was a weird statement.
Yeah, I mean, up until that point, I just assumed that the like the sexism in this world was just like a product of the society. But this seems to imply that it's like the sort of hierarchy between sexes is like an objective fact about the world.
According to the outside, even. Yeah, that's what it appears to imply.
Yeah, I don't know what to say about that. It's a very discomforting idea. And poor, I think, was it pigs that are damned as well, or was it the snakes?
No,
It seems very unfair.
snakes were good, which surprised me. It was something like pigs were damned for sure, and I feel like they said rabbits too, and for some reason wolves aren't damned.
I don't know. Maybe they're like very masculine, so that's why they get to go to heaven. I don't know.
Because they're predators.
It appears pretty picky and choosy, and it really makes the original Holy War seem different, where the Phantom were fighting Dee and Rithi, and whose side was the good side. They both seemed pretty terrible, but maybe the outside has favorites.
Yeah, maybe it's just not supposed to make sense.
I'm pretty old, and I've been around lots of religious people and religious talks, and a lot of it still doesn't make sense to me in this world. So.
Well, I'm certainly curious to find out more about the outside and about whether there are some like hard rules about what you have to do or who you have to be in order to go to heaven or go to hell.
And Katerina, this is your second time reading it. You read this one a couple months ago, right?
That's right.
What did you notice in these first few chapters, or did you notice anything that stood out to you that you didn't catch the first time?
I don't think there are necessarily things I didn't notice. It was a lot easier because I already knew who the new characters are. I would say maybe what changed this time is I have more sympathy for the female characters. I find it a little bit hard to read Esmenet's POV, um, because she seems so like it kind of feels when you read it, it feels like she's drowning. Like you had this like incredible arc in The Prince of Nothing, where she goes from being this like lowliest person to this extremely powerful person, and then you start the judging eye, and she's just like always complaining how hard it is to be an empress, and she seems so obsessed with her children. I found really uncomfortable. But I think this time around, I have a lot more understanding for where she's coming from, and I can relate to maybe because I just read it like a little bit. You know, I've read the first two books in this series. Like I'm maybe I have just a little more context, so I have more. I can relate to the how she's feeling now, and the situation that she's in, and how having all those weird experiences with Kellus and giving birth to his strange mutant children, how that would that you know who can show no affection to her, how that would kind of mess her up, and also just how hard it can be to try to keep control over an empire that is so big and so difficult to manage. So I think I have a lot more sympathy for her, and also for Mymara. Um, she I don't know, she also like she's such a tragic character that it was quite uncomfortable for me to read. Like is like we had Survey in the first trilogy, and we had Esmenet, and it was pretty sometimes it was pretty bleak to read about these women. So I thought, oh, here's another one. But I did come to like her by the end of the second book, The White Light Warrior. So it's been more enjoyable to read the Judging Eye, read their scenes in the Judging Eye again.
What about you, Daniel? You've read this a couple of times, a few times. Is there anything that stood out to you this time?
Look, a couple things. The weird relationship between the twins that it's only briefly talked about, but it talked about how they had to get some sort of like witch doctor to make them finally stop staring at each other and become themselves somehow. And then when you get the views from Kilmomus's point of view, he like has a secret voice that's always talking to him. And we don't know exactly what Sammy thinks, but according to his mom, he doesn't think that much. So he should be the one that she loves the most, but she loves Kilmomus because he seems to be there and have love, but he also pinches beetles and just thinks about killing everyone. Wants his mom. His devotion to his mom is strange too, because he'll talk about how like dumb she is, but then also that she's like the most glorious thing in the world to him at the same time.
He is very possessive of Esmenet, and he hates Kellus. That is very clear, even from just from the prologue.
And then we got some mundane dreams by Seswatha, which has been that was kind of weird. I came in just talking about stubbing a toe, how traumatic it was in his dreams that usually involved just like mass murder.
Yeah, it's like a toe. What a breakthrough. But
And
I mean, it is
also,
interesting. Sorry to interrupt the dreams. There was one dream at the end of the Thousandfold Thought that Kamian had, I think, like in the last chapter maybe, which also seemed to change from the dreams that he would normally experience. But it doesn't seem like he noticed that in that dream. Like it seems like something he only came to realize over years, over a couple of years, that his dreams were starting to change. And it makes you wonder why that is. Like, what is it? Maybe because he's a wizard, like because he's left the mandate that he gets to dream differently, or has it is like is it are these like is he dreaming the real dreams, or are they maybe maybe someone implanted them, or is the mandate sort of dreaming some false dreams, and now Kamin's the one who's actually discovering the truth about Siswatha.
How
Like
near,
I'm suspicious that he's suddenly getting these revelations. It's odd.
and how one of the kings might have been his son, actually, Saswatha's son, maybe. Seems like Akamian also at one point says he thinks maybe Saswatha's trying to talk to him directly somehow through these mundane dreams. But even he doesn't know. He's just trying to find meaning out of it. He talks about how even some of the more common dreams they have variances in the ending, and people have like tried to apply numbers to the variances and just went crazy trying to search for meaning in just slight changes in the dreams they share. And he's just looking for one thing. What is Ishable? And now he finds
Yeah.
out that the unholy or the, what do they call it? The Great Ordeal is marching, and he wasn't ready to hear that news.
Yeah, he thought he had more time. But like, that's what happens when you lock yourself up in a tower and don't talk to anyone for 10 years. But he is very, very single-minded and just focused on, I mean, is it revenge that he's looking for? It does seem like it doesn't seem like he cares about the world or saving the world from the console or anything worldly. It just seems that he wants to learn the truth about Kellus and destroy him with the
Proof.
help of that. Yeah.
Proof is what is driving Akamian at this point.
Like, what does he think is going to happen? If like, or that he's going to show up in Momem and tell Esmenet, see, I was right all along. I don't like. She knows. Like I think she's lost from what I can tell, even just from like this one chapter. It seems like she's pretty much lost the infatuation that she has with Kellus. She's moved beyond that.
Yeah, she doesn't like being around him, but she also believes that the consult is real and that everything he's doing is right, but to her he's like horrible. I think it talks about how she was surprised they even had the twins, because like she wanted nothing to do with them long before that, once she realized all her kids were just going to be incapable of love. And the kid she gave away comes back and now just has hate instead, which is justified, I guess.
Yeah, I think she at some point she mentions that the consult or the threat of the skin spies are the one thing that like the reason why she suffers Kellus. And it's a pretty stark contrast to the love that she was professing for Kellus at the end of the first trilogy.
Kind of the
Right.
same trajectory that Acamian had with Kellus. That he had this infatuation that he couldn't stand to be around him, well, for other reasons, but kind of the same path.
Right now, action-wise, Kellus is doing what he should do to stop the second apocalypse. He's giving money for shrink heads. He's amassed an army to go up and like fight the shrink or whatever he's trying to do with this Great Ordeal. And that is the goal of the mandate and what they think. They need to stop the second apocalypse, and the shrink are like the horde. So the horde needs to be cold. But personage-wise, he's for sure a false prophet. They know that because he has basically admitted it to those few people. So he's doing what should be done, but admittedly a false prophet and a horrible person. It's just so a weird needle point Kellus is on.
Yeah, it's like he's almost the hero of the story, but do the ends really justify the means? But I mean, if you end up saving the world from a genocide, does that not make you a good guy? I don't know. You know, even if you make a few people in your life miserable, and you know, some like few thousand or tens of thousands die on the side, I don't know.
That's like a moral dilemma question, I guess. If you kill one person to save 10 people, are you going to heaven or hell? You killed a person, so.
Well, anything
Okay.
else? Go ahead, Jenny.
I guess we'll see. I'm glad that you liked these first 4 chapters so much, because I think things are about to cook up a little bit now.
I think all these children, I think this whole setup is going to end very badly somehow. I'm not sure how, but you get the impression that it's just teetering on the edge. That's something, I don't know if many of them will survive by the time the series is over. Just you kind of get that, I don't know, for me anyway, maybe I'm just bleak. Something bad is going to happen to most of them.
I did tell you guys that I expected this series to match the darkest of the darkest stuff you've read, so.
Seems fine so far, but we'll see.
Is it darker than Negative Space?
We'll see when we get there.
Okay.
In a different sense, I would say for sure. In most senses, probably for sure.
Because I've heard from a lot of people that the 4th book is it's just like this mind-blowing experience. So,
but we do have my Mara, who seems like a generally good person, and Swordwell, who seems like a generally good person.
Yeah, I think
sharp
that's
contrast
really
to the first series, right?
Especially Surreal. I think my Mara is obviously very damaged in some respects, but she has a certain strength about her that does make her somehow it does make her feel like she is a positive character, even though there is a lot of trauma that she carries with her. But Sorwheel for sure, like he's it's surprising, especially for a man, like even if he's very young, to be so uncorrupted, so pure in some ways. It's
Well,
very refreshing and very unexpected. Like you wouldn't expect it in the world as we have come to know it, at least so far.
that reminds me of a couple of revelations he has. One was like about how he used to always yell at his father and be like, "Oh, I'm running away to the three seas. They're so much better than here." And then here this man from the three seas is coming and his father standing up to them, and he kind of reflects on how shitty of a child he was, I guess, as well as he thinks about a time that he was picking on this other like menial caste kid, and he did it for no reason, and just because kind of everybody around him was doing it, and just what kind of person was he for just being like that. It was interesting to see him because we know he's 16, so he's definitely naive to a lot of the world, but he's learning. And his father told him what he would be their last sword strike against them. Is that what he said? I don't remember the exact wording.
I think he said something about vengeance. Let me see if I have it. Do I have it somewhere? He said that Sorwell will be their final sword stroke, their final vengeance.
There was a
But
quote.
I just sorry.
There was a quote when he was thinking, and he said, "War is an extension of argument, and swords were simply words honed to a bloodletting. It was always the conclusion." I thought that was good.
Yeah.
After they had argued and realized that there was no resolution and war was starting.
Yeah, it was kind of sad to see Proyas just I guess like so weary of like 20 years of just war and bloodshed and fighting and killing people. It seemed like he genuinely wanted Sorwheel's dad to capitulate and join them instead of them having to fight them.
Yeah, I almost thought he like saw himself in Harwill to a point, like his stubborn proudness and just unerring belief that he was right until the end when he kind of hunched over and made Sorwill sad, looking weak.
Yeah. But I love the relationship between Sorwheel and his father. Like he seems to be or seems to have seems to have been a really good role model. And like again, it's a very unexpectedly warm relationship between two men in this world that I wouldn't necessarily expect to see. Like
And then
Sorwheel's dad genuinely seems to genuinely care for his son, and Sorwheel seems to have a lot of respect and love for his father as well.
and they're both like loyal, nice people, and their empire seems to be like founded upon morals. And he's just like, just keep going, just leave our city alone. And then this holy group of people that are fighting in the name of God just destroyed them all.
Yeah, I wonder if it's just like is it just because they're from this very like specific area of the world, or is it just they happen to be nice people, despite their circumstances?
They
We haven't
somehow
we,
reminded
we
me of the Starks, reminded me of Winterfell, and Winterfell got wrecked.
Yeah, I can see some parallels.
Anything else you guys can think of?
I have just one thing. What do you think about my Mara's sections, POV sections, being written in the present tense? That's probably the weirdest thing about this book for me. It was so jarring when I first started it, and it took me a really long time to get used to it. And I'm still not sure that I have gotten used to it.
I catch
It's
it,
just
but
bizarre.
it's not jarring at all to me, but I catch it. But I know exactly what you mean. They are. When it gets to her, it's definitely written completely different.
Huh.
Steve didn't even notice.
I didn't notice. I didn't even notice.
But if you go back and read, it'll be like, I stoked the fire. I threw a log in. When she it's just all written really different compared to every single other point of view.
Yeah, well, I noticed it immediately, and I've been wondering since, what is the reason for that? Like, what makes her so different from the other characters that she would get, like that he would write her POV this way and not in past tense as all the other ones. It's just it's strange.
I would say there's definitely a reason. It is completely different than any of the other characters, and if there wasn't a reason, you wouldn't have wasted the time. I'm sure he had to like bring himself out of his own head and his own storytelling to write her parts. Curious to see how writing her parts was different than the rest of the parts, actually, because it is different.
For sure.
Yeah.
I guess the next time you get to a Nimara point of view, to see if you notice, Steve.
I didn't even notice. It did feel different. I just didn't really think about it too much. But it did have a different feeling to it, but I didn't catch that.
It's almost that on the paper, it is how I notice it more. The whole format of the writing is just different somehow when I look at it.
Very interesting. Cool. So 1 through 4, and then next week we'll be doing 5 through 8.
Cool. Yeah, that sounds right.
Awesome. So there are 16 chapters, and we'll do 4 each week. Kind of nice pace. So awesome. So Katerina, where's the best place for people to find you and tell you how wrong you are about Sabon?
Well, you're more than welcome to present your arguments to me on the Page String forum, or you can also find me on Instagram at The Errand.
Your inbox will be flooded with Sabon, pro Sabon readers.
I'm sure he has a large following in the community.
And Daniel, where can people find you?
I'll be in the comments letting Steve know he's wrong about Nair. You can all do that with me.
I will most certainly like that comment.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, maybe I'll change my mind. Maybe it'll change my tune. I get the feeling we haven't seen the last of him, so we'll see how it works out. Awesome. Well, thanks everybody. Really appreciate it. Glad to be back and be on this next series. So we'll see everyone next week.